Hey guys, Chris here for Thoman's Guitars and Basses. Welcome to Guitar Tech Tips Q&A number 9. As always, thank you for all the awesome comments, questions, all the advices in the comment sections. I really appreciate them. Keep them coming. Let's start with Tony Harley. He wrote this under the first guitar setup video we made for beginners. Tony writes, "Truss-wet adjustments should be accurate, not eyeballs or based on feel, but a feeler gauge and set to a given spec. This then facilitates better results when adjusting the bridge for action, which is what sets the feel of a guitar. Any other way, you're just never gonna get the best out of your setups." My short answer is yes, you're totally right. The longer version is it really depends on the person and the situation. Like most of the professional guitar techs I've been talking to said that they don't really measure anything anymore because they just know exactly how the artist they work for likes his or her guitar set up, which makes a lot of sense because as soon as you have a little bit of experience of what you prefer in your guitar or the person you're setting the guitar up for, it's just you don't need to measure anymore. And when we're talking about beginners, I kind of figured out over the years that the best way of doing your first setup is the simplest way. Without gauges, if it's possible, without being as accurate as possible, because that's the part that makes most people sort of insecure about this whole thing. They get a weird gauge and they don't know where to put it. Like, do they have to push down the string to put it under or not? Or it's just confusing. So for most people to get into this, the nicest way of doing this whole thing is with the simplest method. And even if that's not the most accurate one, I kind of figured that most people will then want to understand more and dig deeper and use those gauges for the best possible setup. So I think it makes sense to start with just feeling stuff, understanding stuff, and then getting into the more accurate setup steps. Next one is from Andy. Does this work for a scratchy 3-way toggle switch? He's talking about the contact spray or cleaner spray. We had this episode. Yes, of course. You can definitely use contact spray for toggle switches, blade switches, obviously pots, and all those electronic parts where moving parts are involved in the connection. Just a few drops will be enough, definitely. And it's also very important to use proper contact spray. That's something I addressed in that episode, and it just needs to be said every time. I think it's very important. It needs to clean and also lubricate. If you just use one of those, it's not gonna do any good. And some of those sprays like WD-40, which is great for other things, might even damage the pot, for example. And while we're talking about cleaners and contact sprays, this came under the same episode, PJV Music. Now, obviously, the deoxit is the preferred choice, but what if you're simply unable to get any actual contact spray? Are there any alternatives that we could use? I saw that you can use acetone and whatnot, but that wouldn't lubricate it, just clean it. I love creative alternative methods for many things, like whether we're talking about setups or mods and just being creative and think outside of the box. This is clearly not the case. I'm sure someone who knows everything about chemistry and whatever would tell you, yeah, sure, use this and that. I wouldn't go there. I'm sure that there are methods, and if you know anything that's 100% sure and safe and you've been using it for decades and never ever damaged any parts, leave it in the comments below. I would appreciate it, but I would definitely stick to good quality contact sprays because of what you told. You need to clean it and you need to lubricate it. Otherwise, surfaces will be damaged or it will just not clean it enough. So if you appreciate your guitar and you don't want to swap parts just because, oh, that didn't work out, just use good quality contact sprays. The most expensive ones will cost whatever, $15, euros-ish, which is not super cheap, but it will last forever. So it's definitely worth the investment. All right, I love this one. This one is from E. Sharp Ferdinand. What a name. Can someone explain to me something I've always wondered? Yngwie Malmsteen has always used big jumbo frets on his guitars, even though the frets are scalloped, well, the fretboard is scalloped. Why is this? Isn't this just unnecessary and pointless, even having a negative impact on the tone? Well, go ahead and ask Yngwie what he thinks about all that having negative effect on the tone. It will definitely change everything, but if you like it or not, it's up to you to decide, obviously. The fact that he uses big frets and the scalloped fretboard basically amplifies the effect of that scalloping. So he just really do not want to feel any wood under his fingertips, which is, you know, it's his thing. So if you like that, you will love it as well. And if you don't, well, just stick to smaller frets and don't scallop the fretboard. It will definitely affect the playing experience as well, not just the tone of the guitar. So you will play differently, you will grab the neck differently, your vibrato, your bendings, all those things will change because of that different feel. So yes, it has an effect on the tone. If it's better or not, it's up to you to decide. And he just really loves scalloped necks. So he uses big frets as well. Next one came from Eric Scott under the No More Ground Buzz episode, where we were talking about ground buzz, how to figure out what is the issue, etc. What about overly noisy Strat pickups? Same thing, single coil noise. Not at all the same thing. If we're talking about single coil hum, that has nothing to do with ground hum. Two very different things. Ground hum needs to be fixed. It's just an issue in the electronics and you can figure it out and you can solve it. And then end of that story. Single coil noise is very different. You need to try to shield as much of the guitar as possible if you have big issues with single coil pickups having too much hum. We have an episode, you can check it out, it's going to be linked right over here. And yeah, that's just the thing. That's just what single coils do. They hum a bit more than humbuckers or silent, like noiseless single coils. P90s are even wilder. These ones, this is a humbucker size P90, but still, it's a P90 and these are the noisiest out of all the single coil pickups. It's just a thing. Noise is part of the signal. If you cannot stand it, just shield the guitar or use different pickups which will cancel the hum. Next one is about push-pull pots and coil splitting humbuckers. It's from Rowan Harris. What if I have two humbuckers? I have a Les Paul and I want to split the coils like that. What should I do for the second one? You do the exact same thing. Like the little pin you used on the push-pull pot for the first humbucker, that's the exact same row where you have to wire the other humbucker's cables the same way. Just put it on the same level, like there are 3 levels of a push-pull, of a normal standard push-pull. You will have the ground on one level and you have the other pickup, as I've shown in that video, on another level of pins. These are always pairs of pins. And then you have one push-pull for both humbuckers and you will split both of them with that one knob. And the last one is from V. Lee. This came under the Classical String Guide video. I have an Art & Lutherie steel string acoustic parlor size guitar. It's fun and sounds great. I used to play classical for a few years back in high school and I missed the mellow warmth of nylon. I also kind of wish my 3 low strings really played with a bit of the mellow resonance of an orchestral double bass, mixed with some of the bite and heaviness of an electric bass. It's just a sound I kind of imagine for this guitar, but I don't even know if I can put nylon or bass strings on an acoustic guitar. More about that in a sec. Maybe it wouldn't damage the neck or twist it, so I'm trying to think how to create that sound or whatever is closest to it that works on this beautiful guitar. Well, first of all, nylon strings and bass strings are not a good idea on a steel string acoustic guitar. Nylons are going to be a hassle to make, like, knot it somehow because it doesn't have a ball end, so it will slip out. And anyhow, it's just a different type of string that's not really made for steel string acoustic guitars. The neck is going to be too narrow, the nut is going to be way too narrow, so it's not really a good idea. Bass strings, please do not do that, especially if you want to tune them up to like a guitar register. it's not gonna do any good to your guitar, and also it's not gonna fit, like the bowl end is gonna be too big for the bridge hole for the strings, for the bowl ends, and also the string might be too thick for the tuners. You cannot push it through the hole to then make all those turns. Nah, don't go there. What you could try is maybe flat wound strings, like jazz strings, right? So those are not gonna be bronze or phosphor bronze, but whatever, you could try it. It might bring you closer to some sort of a gypsy jazz kind of tone, which is, I think, a really cool tone, especially with a smaller size body, like a parlor-sized acoustic. I think that can give you some vintagey, maybe kind of double bassy kind of vibes. You could try it. The issue, though, is the body size. If you want to have that mellow, big, low end, you need at least a dreadnought-sized body, or maybe even a jumbo acoustic. So a part of size is always going to be mid-rangey and less of a nice and woolly on the low end side. But as told, flat wounds could maybe sound really interesting. Also, what you could try is silk and steel strings. The bass strings, the EAD, will have a silk core and the metal wound wire around it, which again gives you more of a mellow tone than if the core was metal as well. So that might work out, and yeah, maybe just experiment with all these strings. But if nothing really gives you that vibe out of the usable, safe string types, just leave the guitar as it is, especially as you're saying it's a great sounding guitar. Maybe then just get another at one point, maybe a baritone acoustic, which will definitely bring you closer to that kind of double bassy kind of vibe. You guys take it easy. Thanks so much for watching. Hit me with all those comments down there in the comment section. I'll be there checking them out and trying to answer as much of them as I can. Don't be afraid of setting up and fixing your guitars. It's time to become your own guitar tech.